thank you everyone so much for joining us today. Thank you for those of you who have joined us over the last 3 days. Without all of you attending, right, this event is nothing. Bringing together the community is something that's really, really important to us. At Kingscrowd, one of the things we've always led with for the last 8+ years is education, right? We know that this is a new asset class. We know that learning about these deals is something wholly new. Oftentimes, you've never heard of these companies before. So, to bring them to life, to bring the amazing founders behind them to life, to allow you to connect with them, to ask your questions, to learn more about them, to do your own diligence, to be educated on how to do your diligence, those things matter, right? That's the backbone of making this market work, is making thoughtful investment decisions, knowing what you're doing, and building a diversified portfolio. Hopefully, over the past handful of days, you feel like you've had an opportunity to do that, to see some amazing companies. I know I've heard some great feedback that people have been blown away by the quality of companies out there in the market. And that matters a lot to us because we work really hard at Kingscrowd day in and day out to try and source and find the best deals out there, right? And not the loudest deals, not the deals with the most followers, not the deals with the most dollars, but the best deals. And it doesn't mean we're going to be right every time, but what we're looking for is quality, quality in their characteristics and how they operate and how they lead themselves. And I think we've been able to bring a lot of those companies here over the past few days. And hopefully for you founders out there who are looking to learn how to pitch or learn how to raise money in this market, you've learned a lot along the way as well. And just want to say thank you to all of our participants who have helped us over the past few days and have been a part of these amazing conversations. So tonight we have our first ever pitch competition. We've never done this before. This is a championship session. These founders were picked by the crowd over the past few days during their sessions. And now we're bringing 5 of the favorites from the past few days to our final session. The winner here today will be getting $5,000 invested in their current round, and hopefully many of you will want to follow with that. That will be picked by myself and our associates, Leia and Teddy, who are going to join us here in a second. And then there will also be a crowd vote, and whoever wins the crowd vote will be receiving an opportunity to be featured in our newsletter on Monday, this upcoming Monday or Tuesday, when the newsletter goes out, so that we can highlight, the crowd winner as well. So this is going to be a really fun session. Super interesting. It's going to be 1-minute pitches. They get one slide. And then we're going to get into 10 minutes of questions for each one. So we hope all of you ask a lot of questions. We want to hear from you. We want this to be an opportunity to not just be a traditional pitch. We want this to be an opportunity to get your questions answered, the most pertinent ones, really dive deep in a quick amount of time, and learn things you might not otherwise learn if you didn't have this opportunity. So with that, I'm going to invite up everyone to the webinar, and let's dive in and get going. We got 5 amazing founders here tonight, and I'm really excited to feature all of them. Here comes the first, here comes the second, here comes the third. All right, the crowd is coming on up. And for the first pitch tonight, for 1 minute, we have Miguel from Surge. Surge, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Before I get started, just want to thank you and your entire team for putting on a fantastic last few days. It's been great connecting with other founders and new potential investors. And so with that, I will get started. AI is hitting a wall in its real-world access. Today's models rely on static, biased, incomplete data, limiting autonomy, logistics, and cities. We turn intersections into data-generating infrastructure, a real-time data layer for AI. Our privacy-first, high-frequency data can be used by multiple systems, turning intersections into compounding assets that improve how cities move. This isn't software, it's infrastructure. Infrastructure defines markets. At 50 locations, we've 12 million ARR potential. In 3 years, 250 million ARR is modeled. We've partnered with Nvidia, leading AI and infrastructure operators to deploy power and monetize the network. The timing isn't optional, it's inevitable. AI needs real-world input. Edge compute unlocked it. Privacy makes it unavoidable. Every computing shift creates a new layer, and this is that moment for AI. We're not competing in a category, we're building the one everything depends on. Surge is that layer.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Teddy, you want to lead us off here?
Yeah, absolutely, Miguel. Great to see you again. Great job.
Likewise, Teddy. Thanks.
So can you just dive in a little bit more into what exact type of data are you collecting and what does a potential data package look like that you would give to a commercial customer?
Yeah, so got to start off first with it's our sensing and edge compute layer is privacy first, right? So we're not utilizing any computer vision camera systems. So I think for the first part of that answer is starting there. And when you think about the type of data that we're providing, you realize we're filling a gap that currently exists. You know, a lot of ways that folks are still utilizing data today is by scraping it, relying on signal pings. All of that is fragmented. It's either siloed or it's just being aggregated downstream. And so for us, what we do is provide that continuous real world data at its highest density point. So we look at converting intersections into shared intelligence tools. So there's a variety of whether it's object detection, vehicle detection, pedestrian detection, dwell time patterns. The ability to track vectors and speeds. Those are just some of the data attributes that we're collecting and processing in real time.
Miguel, question for you. Can you talk about some of the end applications of what you're collecting, what that would inform? Like, does this create more efficient red lights so that, you're not waiting at the red light as long? Like, what does it look like? Why do these municipalities and things want to do this?
Yeah, well, so a great question, Chris. I think what we've recognized is that real-time data is one of the fastest growing markets out there. And where everybody initially goes to, because it is low-hanging fruit, you hear Surge and us operating at the intersection, you think of transportation, mobility, and logistics. And I would say those three individual industries or data marketplaces are just three of about 14 very unique data segments that we have identified. So, what's of interest to those parties right now at the intersection are not just understanding when accidents happen, but where the market's going to head is getting into the predictive analytics. So understanding the near misses between vehicles is really valuable, but you also have to take into account the pedestrians that are also traversing those intersections. So being able to better understand, the dynamics that happen there at the intersection is not just for vehicles, but also understanding the movements of people. And ultimately, what we want to do is create this layer, what we call the infrastructure for good. So, if our network and our system that provides this real-time data can help reduce the number of accidents, not only just between vehicles, but pedestrian and vehicles is really important to us.
I love that. Couple questions from the crowd, and then Leigh, I'd love to hear from you as well. So here's a question from Tom Wright. Miguel, are you a first mover? How do you get into all these cities before others do this, like companies that are driving their cars around and collecting that type of data?
Yeah, Tom, we do consider ourselves to be a first mover. Um, we don't have really a competitor because we're defining this new category. Um, we can get into like how we partner and who we partner with, but our ability, so Surge is less than 2 years old. We've taken this what initially was this idea, fast forward to 2 years today. Not only do we have a viable smart node that we deploy at intersections, but we have a growing pipeline that will keep us busy for the next 5 years. So our ability to secure attachment rights, not only through our network, but our partner network allows us to scale rather quickly. So we just deployed in December in the French Quarter in New Orleans. We signed our contracts there in the city of Atlanta with Georgia Power Company, which is one of the largest, power codes there in the Southeast that allows us to attach our nodes to their infrastructure. And so we just copy and paste, if you will, with the local flavor there in any respective market.
Great. Thank you, Miguel. I can't help but wonder how defensible this type of business is. Why wouldn't, just an OpenAI, Google, even Amazon come do that and just, have just way more capital, capabilities, and take over the market?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll give you some real direct answers. Most of the big tech companies are siloed. They're not really providing the hardware at those intersections. They're still even aggregating their data from downstream from other users, right? So while they could be considered a competitor, we've had conversations with some of their subsidiaries that are looking to us that they would use our real-time data to help calibrate their efforts. So in some of those discussions, we realized what we kind of thought we knew, but was affirmed by other of those subsidiaries that they're still reliant upon that synthetic, static, biased data that honestly is just being fed through the internet. So the best place for AI to evolve into is this physical world, which is what Surge is building. Um, there's some other points I think that are worth acknowledging. We don't necessarily perceive them as competitors. In a lot of ways, our data feed will go to support their efforts. So we enable physical AI. We enable autonomous systems, and I think that's one of the biggest differentiators. So what Tom asked, part of the secret sauce is to secure the attachment rights, which we have plenty of. Um, the next part is our platform is open access, unlike a lot of those big tech systems. So we walk into a community with some of our partners that you see there on this slide, where there are other software that is already integrated or piggybacking off of our platform. And many of these in Cron and Blueband in respective here, which is an AI integration and 3D perception software, they're already working with many of the cities and departments of transportation. So when you think of Surge stacking multiple users that offer not just our ability to enhance our data, but are offering this public good back to the community, it's really hard to undo once you're there. I could probably spend more time going into some more examples, but I want to pause there.
No, I think that's really helpful. Just to combine a couple of questions here from Arthur and Robert, where do you get all the data? I think you're starting to get at that anyway, but are there
Mhm.
any individual privacy issues? And then with all of that data, how is an average person in a city going to see a benefit at their level?
Yeah, two great questions. I'm going to combine them. Again, we use LiDAR and edge compute. LiDARs can be found in pretty much every automobile on the road today. So we cannot see, we don't use facial recognition. There's no license plate reader. There are just no images, right? So there is nothing to tease out from our data layer, unlike cameras, which are a lot of times getting pushback now because they're used for surveillance purposes. There is no personal identification information that we share from the beginning, full stop. The other part of that question, I actually lost track. What was the other part of that
How are
question?
people going to see a difference like at the
Yeah.
individual level?
Yeah, so this is partly why we're here. This is partly why we're raising a Reg CF, is we want to be unlike any other tech company, deep tech, infrastructure company that's building this data layer for AI. It's like and we don't our push and focus is to not offer this up to traditional investors that are typically owning all of this infrastructure. We want to provide everyday citizens that, I mean, frankly, everyone on this call that's listening in, we're all generating all this data, but we don't get a chance to own the infrastructure that is using our data for their own proprietary purposes. And that's also part of the mission of Surge as a public benefit corporation. We want to provide everyday retailers an opportunity to own what we believe will be a massive infrastructure play at the end of the day.
Got it. Well, thank you very, very much. That was awesome. Appreciate you answering those questions. There are more questions in the chat if you want to type your answers in, Miguel, and some in the Q&A section as well. So feel free to do that. For folks who are on the call, know that we have access to all the links. If you go to a resource link at the bottom of the Zoom to actually access reports on all of these companies that are typically behind our paywall, you could actually access them right now and check them all out to dive deeper on some of the key analytics around each one of these businesses, which I think is really cool. All right, next up, we have Keaton from Rise Robotics. You are up.
Thank you, Chris. I'm just waiting till I get access to share my screen.
All right, you should be good to go.
All right, there we go. Do you see my screen? Yes. Okay. The $750 billion heavy machinery sector that powers the global economy is broken. It uses hydraulic systems extensively, which waste 75% of their energy and cost nearly $1 trillion a year in leaks, fuel, and lost productivity. At Rise, we built a fluid-free actuator that delivers 3 times the speed, efficiency, and durability of hydraulics with 0 emissions. Our fully digital system enables the electrification and autonomy of heavy machinery. It uses a belt and pulley architecture on which we have over 20 patents. Our products include a collapsible crane, a munitions handling unit, hydraulic-free liftgate, and standalone cylinders. Till date, we've generated 9.7 million in revenues from customers like Danfoss and the Air Force. Our goal is to become a unicorn in 5 years, growing using a SaaS-like model with recurring revenue from our commercial products. We're raising to start scaling to 100 million in revenues. Join the 2,500 plus investors that made us the #1 Reg CF campaign of 2025. Invest.riserobotics.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Leigh. You want to kick this one off?
Yeah, my pleasure. So we know that beltratics, what you're building is just way better than hydraulics from every single state point. But ultimately, what is going to drive customers' decision to go with beltratics versus hydraulics is whether they are going to make more money or actually save money from your products. Can you tell me how does beltratics actually help your clients from a financial perspective?
Absolutely. So 3 times the speed means that they're getting more throughput out of the same machines. And 3 times the efficiency means their OpEx goes down by 1/3. And then, of course, 3 times the durability means that they have a lot less downtime. And that is really our pitch. As our first commercial customer, we're tackling the oil and gas sector, which has a huge challenge specifically around durability, but also around cleanliness and efficiency. And so that particular sector has a pain point around servicing the hydraulic systems that are distributed across the state of Texas and other states. And so that's where we come in and we can specifically address their pain point. That vertical alone has an $11 billion TAM, of course, in a $750 billion market.
So, I know there's so many opportunities to go after, and something I've appreciated about as we've gotten to know you is your focus and coming in and saying, okay, we need to focus on areas where we can commercialize. Talk to us about the liftgate market and how commercialization in that segment is going.
Yes. So in liftgates in particular, as I mentioned before, but some of the folks watching might not know, what's exciting about that space is that 15% of liftgates are retired every year. So it's a recurring revenue business for us. And once we acquire a customer, we have them for life. The key thing is that a lot of these customers are B2B customers and they have large fleets. And so the process of selling to them involves pilots. So we most recently completed our second pilot with a distributor of a huge beverage company based in New England. And out of that, we've gotten some feedback on improvements that they want to make specifically on the user interface. So the team is working on that. And after that, we'll execute another pilot and then we're on to sales.
Outstanding. Teddy, you want to ask a question here? And then please do drop your questions in the chat. All right, it looks like we have some coming in, but Teddy, you go first.
Yeah, so just kind of going off of previous question. So that $9.7 million in revenue, assuming kind of includes development contracts, some product revenue. Can you kind of break it out a little bit and kind of discuss what percentage of it is repeatable product revenue versus a one-time engineering or pilot work? Kind of where's that 9.7 million coming from?
Yeah, about 1.5 million of that is in product sales to the Air Force, and the rest is in joint development between commercial partners and the Air Force, and also the Army most recently.
Got it. And this is kind of going off of Leia's question, but in the real world deployments you've seen, do does your technology underperform hydraulics in any particular area, or is it kind of all different aspects that you've measured it is better?
That's a great question. I'd say in terms of underperformance, the one con that we have to our technology is that our cylinders are slightly larger than hydraulic systems. And so the retrofitability of it varies based on sector. And one of the reasons for tackling oil and gas is that the cylinder is completely exposed. And so retrofitting those systems has been very easy. And then when you look at construction, three sides of the cylinder are exposed. So that would be an easy market to retrofit on. And then there's some markets where the cylinder is buried deep inside the vehicle, which would require a full redesign. So that's about the only disadvantage that I can think of right now.
Yep, got it.
Terrific.
Great.
All right, couple questions coming in from the crowd. What is Rise's biggest hindrance to scale?
Yeah, so we're in the B2B sector, and so the thing that's keeping us from scaling really is the process of initially converting a customer. So it starts off with finding the right people, working our way into the organization, then doing a pilot, winning over key stakeholders, and then being able to start talking about sales and POs and so on. And so that's the process that I'd say is the thing about this business that I found most frustrating personally, because I previously was at iRobot, leading large teams, and it was the consumer business. And so you could, with advertising, move things very quickly. But in this sector, we have to get to know our customer, understand their pain points, and that takes some time.
All right, another question coming in. How easy, and this actually kind of goes to what you're talking about, but I think it's a fair question. How easy or hard is it to get these companies to change out their old tech, which they are very used to, and bring in new tech?
It varies. And so what we're doing is rather than talk to customers that don't want to change or are skeptical, we basically pivot to customers that have a pain point. I picked the oil and gas sector. We're partnering with a very nimble OEM that has a problem today. And if we solve that problem, they can scale very quickly and we can scale with them. So rather than spend time on customers that are going to take effort and energy from us, we just find the customers that understand the problem and are willing to play ball.
Got it. Excellent. Well, one more question for you here. You know, one of the challenges when I think about exit for a business like this is if you're going into all these different end segments, does that change who the acquirer is? Like a liftgate, there's liftgate companies, right? But do they want to acquire you if you have munition handlings and collapsible cranes? How do you think about that as the overall strategy? Or is this just a machinery company and it'd be a big machinery company that would acquire you?
But I think the thing that's exciting about being in all these sectors is that there are more acquirers, not less, right? And so the
Hmm.
way that an acquirer would look at, for example, let's say it's a defense prime that says, hey, you won this contract and it's clear that you're going to win the billion-dollar opportunity with the Air Force. We want to buy you. Well, they buy the whole business and spin out the parts that they don't want. But so the way I look at it is that the number of acquirers is much larger for our business because there are so many interesting sectors and so many companies that would want to capture the technology to get a competitive advantage.
I love that. Very, very cool. Well, thank you so much. That was a fantastic pitch. Thanks for answering all the questions. And next up, we have Frontier Bio. You are up.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, I'm going to share my screen here. Can you confirm you see my screen?
Yep, good to go.
All right, here we go. All right, did you know that 90% of drugs that pass animal tests fail in human clinical trials, and that the organ transplant waitlist grows every 8 minutes? At Frontier Bio, we're aiming to end the organ shortage and replace animal studies using lab-grown human tissue. Unlike many biotech startups stuck in the lab, we're generating revenue today. We have 5.5 million in cumulative sales from human tissue models and services with partners like Mayo Clinic. Our next clinical step is a living tissue engineered vascular graft using an off-the-shelf bioresorbable scaffold seated with the patient's own stem cells right at the bedside. The graft is designed to break down over time and become a permanent natural blood vessel inside the body. Solving blood vessels solves the hardest part of organ engineering. We have the tech, the traction, and the team. World-class team. Join us in advancing regenerative medicine and building the foundation for transplantable organs. Thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you, Eric. Teddy, since you're the lead on this one, I'll let you take it.
Sure. Great job, Eric. So,
Thank you.
how big do you think the revenue opportunity is on the side of the business that you've already commercialized, which is kind of providing, research organizations, different players like that with your tissue models? Kind of how big do you think that is? How big do you think it could be? And do you think that revenue could eventually fund your FDA approval?
Good question. So the tissues for testing market, it's different for the different kinds of tissues. The biggest market there is for blood-brain barrier, and that's in the hundreds of millions, just that segment alone. Just because any drug that is created, even if it's created for the liver, it goes in the bloodstream and can affect the brain or the blood-brain barrier. So hundreds of millions is my answer there. And yes, it could fund the human clinical trials for our vascular graft as well. Yep. I will note that the vascular graft market is much bigger in the billions, multi-billions. Yeah.
Talk to me about getting this to like full commercialization. What type of investment is that going to take from a dollars perspective, a time perspective? What do you need to prove for this to be something that can be utilized at scale? It sounds like there's a dramatic need, but what does it take to get there?
Yeah, so for our tissue engineered vascular graft, we need to do another 18 months of preclinical studies before we can go into human patients. And those human patients will be in clinical trials, and that will need another few years. And clinical trials are very expensive. So we're estimating, yeah, it's definitely going to be more than $30 million or so for clinical trials. Yeah. And then for the tissues for the testing market, for drug testing and drug discovery, that would need much less just because we don't have the regulatory hurdles that the vascular graft has for this market. And that could be like another 10 million or so. Yep.
And who is the end customer when all of this is said and done that's going to be paying for all of this?
So for tissues for testing, I mentioned the blood-brain barrier chip that we have. End users there are government is always interested in looking at therapies that could help soldiers with traumatic brain injury, for instance. But pharmaceutical companies are definitely the biggest here. So they develop drugs all the time. Alzheimer's drugs, there's not really a amazing drug out there right now that can just cure Alzheimer's. Those are the big customers, pharmaceutical companies working on drugs for neurological diseases. And then for the vascular graft, there are diabetic patients who have peripheral artery disease in the leg and they need a bypass graft. Same with patients who have cardiovascular disease. If somebody has a heart attack and they need a bypass graft, that's where our blood vessel can be used.
Very cool. Leia, any questions?
Yes. Talking about the product specifically, I'm wondering what is the biological constraint that you're trying to overcome right now? Thinking, do you need to improve vascularization? Is there immune rejection risk? How are you going to scale that? What's really the bottleneck right now for you?
Yeah, the bottleneck right now, vascularization is the main bottleneck in all of tissue engineering. It's kind of the holy grail. Many experts call that the holy grail. And that's why we're starting with solving blood vessels first, because it's the foundation for all other tissues. If you master blood vessels, then you can go for creating pancreas tissue, kidney tissue, etc. So that's what we're working on now. We do view that as the biggest challenge. And that's what we're working on now. Yep. Thank you.
I have
Any other
complete
questions?
Yeah, I have a complete belief that you have an incredible team, but I want to highlight it. Can you tell us a little bit about the minds behind this? I mean, this is something that's never been figured out before. Why is this the right team? What experience do you guys have? And how did you even come to go down this road?
Yeah, so my past experience is in there's a bit of everything. I've got a hand in a lot of different kinds of projects. So in my master's, I have two master's degrees. In one of them, I worked on brain-computer interfacing technology. And I used 3D printing. That's when I first discovered 3D printing and fell in love with the idea of 3D bioprinting. So I ended up starting a company that was before Frontier Bio that built low-cost 3D bioprinters. It was the very first low-cost 3D bioprinter at the time, competing against others. And so that's my background. There's some synthetic biology in there as well. Our CTO, Sam, he wrote the most highly cited review paper for tissue-engineered blood vessels. So he has almost 1,000 citations of that review paper. He's a world expert in this field. And then we have other team members as well, PhDs, masters, and they've come from great labs around the world.
Sounds like you got the right team. Holy cow. Teddy, any other questions for Eric?
Yeah, I think another question I have is, as you've discussed today, you're selling tissue models, you are developing the vascular graft, and then kind of long-term, the future of organ engineering. Do you find at all that you might be spreading yourself too thin among those three different pillars, or do you really kind of see them as being complementary to each other where, the team is not spread too thin across each of those?
Yeah, great question, and we get that one a lot from investors. The answer is that third column of organ engineering. We're not creating organs at this moment. We're focusing on the blood vessels, and so with our tissues for testing services, they have vascular components to it as well. So anything we do for customers in the tissues for testing market, it builds our expertise in creating blood vessels. It subsidizes our building of our infrastructure here at Frontier Bio. So yeah, those two categories of tissues for testing and the vascular graft market, they go hand in hand and they build off each other for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, it
Eric,
becomes a
last question for you.
distraction. The reason it's a problem is it dilutes the resources. That's a problem for other startups where there's not funding, but because we're getting revenue, it actually helps. Yeah.
One more question for you. When you kind of reach your pinnacle as a business, you've proven what you wanted to prove and you're in market. I mean, does this ultimately help speed up drug development in that, this is much better than using animal organs and things like that for testing? Does this help on that front as well? Not just their pain point, but like societal pain point of being able to develop drugs faster.
Yeah, it's not only about ending animal cruelty, but it's also about speeding up the drug development process. If you look at statistics, it takes about 12 years to develop a drug from the very conceptual stages all the way through clinical trials. And that's because these pharma companies have to iterate through animal studies, then they go to humans and it fails, even though it worked in animals. So they have to go back to animals, find a new drug. It seems like it works in animals, go back to humans. And so it's just this iteration that they spend millions, tens of millions, it costs $2.1 billion to develop a drug in those 12 years. So testing on human tissue is the key to reducing those cycles and wasting tons of money each cycle. Yeah. So we want to get right in there, make it more efficient, reduce the amount of money it takes to develop one drug. So instead of 12 years, maybe 5 years.
That's awesome. Thank you, Eric. Really, really terrific.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Koios Medical.
See my screen?
Yes, we do.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you for this opportunity. And it's been wonderful to meet some of the new players, the founders, and have this opportunity to share our story. So I'll get right to it. Imagine if the life of a loved one or your life depended on a test, and that test was failed about 20% of the time by some of the smartest people in the world. And those smart people are increasingly short supply. Let's say that test was naming an obscure song, a band from the 90s. You could gamble on a 50-50 answer. You could phone a friend. Now you can use Shazam. Today, people trust Shazam daily, twice on Sundays. Koios is Shazam for breast and thyroid cancer, with more coming. The world is ready for Koios, and Koios is ready for the world. With FDA clearances, CE marks, and more than 20 journal publications, partnerships with world's leading OEMs, and built on a massive and growing proprietary data set of over 3 million images. Our version of Shazam is called Smart Ultrasound, AI software to accurately detect and diagnose cancer while automating interpretation and reporting. Deployed in 30 countries, more than 50 of the top cancer centers in the US, reimbursed by commercial payers, and experiencing accelerating triple-digit growth rates. The first and only mover with a near monopolistic position, because healthcare is hard, ultrasound's even harder. We're poised for profitability in 2026, nearly 20 million in pipeline, 4.5 times burn coverage, and planning expansion to create the comprehensive ultrasound AI analysis and reporting platform. 9 times top 20 most raised. Who's with us? Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Chad. That's awesome. Leah, you want to kick us off here?
Yes. Chad, you just say you have a proprietary data set of 3 million images. How did you acquire that?
So we started collecting data back in 2012. And we've been able to build a prototype on an initial data set. And now with over 70 sources around the world, we have customers and sources of data that are continuously helping us stay current. So it's from customers and other independent sources.
June, it looks like we have someone who has raised their hand. So I'll work to get them on up here. But as we work on that, Chad, you've done some interesting things in terms of integrating with some of the largest players. Talk to us a little bit about that. And what does it take to start getting used at scale if you're integrated with these really large players?
Yeah, the big players, as you see here on the screen, GE, Philips, Siemens is coming, Optum. Philips has about a 300,000 scanner installed base around the world. GE is even bigger than that. We've gotten to be really good at supporting those channels and working side by side with their salespeople. So they're basically our front line in many cases. So we have a lot of leverage. It's a one-to-many relationship, working with literally at a country level with these global international players.
Awesome. Very cool. Teddy?
Yeah, hey Chad. So you mentioned a near monopolistic position. So could you just kind of go into past and present other players in the space, and kind of how your solution is different from them? And I think there have been some acquisitions in the space as well. So just curious on your thoughts there.
Sure, past, present, and future. So when we started with this, there was only one other player in the space, Samsung. And they make a scanner and they make an automated detection that's proprietary to their system, and it's only on scanner and it's not cleared by the FDA. So it's a much lesser version and it's just more the detection and diagnosis. There's another player that's just a single application in thyroid, which is also a single application recently acquired by RadNet and Deep Health, and they do not have a multi-indication, nor do they have the ability to be deployed on scanner. We're on scanner, we're integrated with PACS, and we're vendor agnostic. 17 different makes and models of manufacturer within our most recent training data set.
With everything you have going on in terms of your integrations and how widespread you are on the machine side of things, what is your greatest hindrance to driving adoption and driving growth in the business?
Not a lot of people have ever done this before. Even doctors who sit in a reading room hundreds of times a day, AI is new for them. So we literally have to get them. It's a big change management exercise. So we just launched Northwestern in the last 2 weeks, right? It's a lot of our clinical app specialists working with their app specialists. So we do a lot of training the trainer. We recruit a physician champion, a tech champion. We rely heavily on our partners at GE and Philips to also educate them on AI and answer just some of those basic questions. Because it's so new, there's really not a lot of resistance. There's much more curiosity. And we do a lot of information and awareness raising.
And in terms of adoption, when you roll this out with, at a hospital or wherever it may be, how does that work? Is there a, hey, we'll try this with a couple of our images? Is it, hey, we'll try it alongside what we're doing, but we got to make sure we feel good about it? And when do you become just, fully within the practice being used every time?
Yeah, it really depends on the practice. So, like they say, you meet one hospital, you've met one hospital. So, a large company, they have 180 imaging centers. We were suggesting a slower rollout. They thought it was easy, and we did a shotgun start. So, we did all 180 imaging centers within the first couple of weeks. It doesn't take that long. It's literally, I tell people, if you can use PowerPoint, you can use Koios. You literally click, and analyze, and it's done. So really the questions are, how did you do that? The first thing they say when they see it, they go, wow. Then they say, show me that again. And then they see the fully automated thyroid report. And the first thing they say is, congratulations. It's what they're expecting AI would be able to do for them.
From a business model perspective, can you tell us a little bit about, that 180 locations? One, what is the business model? How do you charge? And two, what does that opportunity alone represent revenue-wise?
Yeah. Obviously that's a very big one. We have a couple different payment models. One is an annual subscription where they pay it up front. We do have customers in the US who've chosen to go at risk, where we do a 50-50 revenue share based on reimbursement. So we try to make it as flexible to them as possible. Overseas, it's based on the number of scanners. If it's through an OEM, if it's a PACS integration, it's based on their annual volume. And we do a value-based pricing model. We sit down with them and we understand their costs and we know their business. We guarantee them a 300 to 400% return on investment. So we get them to understand what the opportunity is. And then when we talk about, dollars and cents, there's no cost to Koios. It's an investment.
Love it. Very, very cool. Looking for any other questions from the crowd. Teddy, as I look for those, any other questions?
Yeah. So Chad, I know you have, FDA 510(k) clearance for the breast ultrasound and expanding into thyroid and other cancers. So curious kind of how much of your core technology is reusable across indications versus requiring retraining, revalidation each time.
So there's no question that every new indication is going to require data. So for example, we built thyroid, but we built it on the chassis of the breast product. And now as we have other data, lymph node, liver in the lab, we're finding that we can get way far down the development path much more quickly based on the models that we've built. And all of this is proprietary. This is data to dollars, right? This is all deep tech. This is all built in-house, 17 different ensembles, one ensemble of 17 different algorithms for the current thyroid product. So as we layer in new data for new indications, what might have taken us 3 or 4 years with breast, it was 1.5 years with thyroid. We're on an accelerated approval pathway with the FDA because we are a breakthrough medical device.
Outstanding. Thank you, Chad, very much. Love your company, obviously. Kingscrowd Capital back company. We think very highly of you guys. Appreciate you being here. All right, last one up for today. We have Future Cardia. You are up.
Thank you, guys. Let me get my slide ready. Okay. All right. My name is Jay Ben with Future Cardia. We are a Y Combinator dropout Stanford startup company that raised $24 million from physician investors, industry reps, executives from our competitors, and of course with equity crowdfunding. Our goal is to provide a solution for over 6 million patients in US suffering from heart failure, which is a $70 billion problem right now. We raised, as I mentioned, we raised $24 million, 39 patients implanted, and we just completed the FDA submission, which we will hear back from the FDA end of this month and another few months after that to finalize the clearance. Thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you. Leah, you want to kick this one off here?
Yeah, I'd like to get into some numbers, Jay. What evidence shows that your device actually can improve the health and outcomes for patients.
And we are a fast follower to an existing product, which is a really good thing for an FDA process. So it's a fast tracked. There's an existing reimbursement, existing data. So we had to show the comparable against the gold standard that's out there, and that's been submitted to the FDA. So a short answer to your question, there is no superiority. It's a have to show.
Did Jed just break for me?
Yeah, he
Yeah,
did cut out there for a sec.
did we break? Oh, I'm sorry. Can you
No
hear me?
Yeah,
problem.
I think
I
you
think
can
you're back.
repeat.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so as a 510K device, we are a fast follower to an existing product that's already out there. There's only two major companies in a $1 billion market. So it's near monopoly, oligopoly. So we have to show the substantial equivalency to enter that market. We cannot show a superiority. If we did that, then it's a completely new trial, completely new category. So that's a good thing for us. So instead of a 7 to 10 year clinical trial, no reimbursement, and all that stuff. We're just following the path that's already been paved for us. So a good analogy for us will be, hardest thing in the NFL is not winning a game, it's not winning a playoff, and not even winning a Super Bowl. The hardest thing in the NFL is making the league, and that's what we're doing.
I love that. Jason, can you talk a little bit about, you talked about there's essentially two players who own the market. What makes this device better for patients? Why do they like this over those?
So in terms of performance, we're about the same. So now it's coming down to boots on the ground and servicing those patients and physicians. So these big companies do not implant and they do not show up for patients in the emergency room and in the hospitals and clinics. We will do that for our patients and our physician implanters. Another thing is this device is right now for an AFib monitoring, which is really big problem and it's an irregular heartbeat problem, but it's a platform device. So one device will tackle two diseases, one called heart failure. So we will get our market entry into the AFib, and then we'll expand into heart failure, which will be dominating in that space.
And in terms of the device, is it smaller? Does the battery last longer because it is being implanted? Are there other benefits as well?
Yeah, yeah. So it's a premium product market, so features not going to make a difference. It's comparing between Lexus, Mercedes, and BMWs are all same cars in the end, right? So our goal is to bring a value to patients and physicians with the extra sensors that will give a higher accuracy in diagnostic and monitoring. And our device is a little bit bigger by design because the competitors made it small to be very sexy, but in the process, they lost the power. They lost everything has to get smaller. So antenna is smaller, so the connection is on the weak side. The battery is smaller, so the battery power is weak. So we made sure that the biggest complaint is answered with a stronger and bigger antenna. And it's just law of physics and have a bigger battery so we can provide a longer monitoring solution for our patients.
Mm. Teddy.
Yeah, hey Jason, just want to say I know you just pitched in the final group and or the group E pitch session, so thanks you for coming to this and putting together the quick and short pitch. But yeah, so on your raise page you mentioned that or you describe your device as AI powered. So curious, where exactly does AI sit in the stack? Is it signal processing, diagnostics, predictive alerts? Kind of where is it exactly?
Yeah, so the signal processing is done already. So imagine a device that's continuously recording your data and just sitting in the cloud. So we have a tr long-term trending data on all our patients. So on the 39 patients, we have over 100,000 hours of data already, and that's within about a year of implant. So imagine if we have 50, 60 patients, and that number just keep, magnitude increase by magnitude. So the trending data is comprised of, so imagine you in 1 minute ECG, there's a 60 beats. So we transpose all the ECG beats, all 10,000, 100,000 of them, and then we use machine learning to come up with an absolute data. And we do that, we compare each day, each week, each month, and as that data deviates, we know their cardiac performance is improving or uh, uh, decreasing.
Love that. When you think about exit plan for a business like this, is it to the duopoly? Is this to helping someone else get into this market? What are your thoughts on that front?
Yeah, the exit in our industry is pretty robust. We hear about $1 billion exit all the time, but in our industry, this happens every 6 months. I'm sorry, every 6 weeks or so.
Hmm.
Very common. Uh, it's not easy, of course. It's the barrier to entry is massively high. The technology barrier is very high. That's why there aren't that many companies in this space. The regulatory barrier is even higher, which further uh, impedes the entrance into the market. Hence, I was using the NFL as an example. Uh, if you get the data, if you get the patient implant and get the FDA clearance, then the value explodes. So and as you can see, these companies just got the approval. They did not show any sales. Matter of fact, one of them is still kind of struggling to sell because it's such a complex device. It works, but it's complex. So our goal is to uh, clear the three major hurdles. Patient implant, which already did that. FDA submission, just completed last month. And then within the next few months, we're going to get the FDA clearance, which will be the third and the biggest milestone to achieve.
Yeah, that's tremendous. So from there, you have the opportunity to begin commercializing and going into market.
Yes.
Got it. Very, very cool. And just out of curiosity, what is some of the feedback that you have heard from physicians that you've worked with doing these 39 implants?
I wish I could show you the video because it's only a minute and 12 seconds. So we implanted with one physician who's very familiar with this. So I said, well, that's not a good benchmark. He does this all the time. So let's give it to a surgeon, who knows how to cut but doesn't know this device. He did it about the same time. So I said, well, he's an experienced surgeon. So let's give it to a medical student. And he also did it under 2 minutes. So the ease of implant is universally accepted, and we also published that as well. Coming from a class 3 life-saving device surgeries where it's 8 to 10 hours and just life or death situation. This is we completed 10 implants
Hmm.
and we were ready for breakfast. So we were done under 10 on before 10 a.m.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, Jason, thank you so much, as always, for joining us, and obviously also Kingscrowd Capital Company, and we love what you've built, and um, wonderful pitch. So appreciate you answering our questions. So
Thank you.
that ends the portion of our discussion here where we go through each one of the investment opportunities. Leah, Teddy, would love to just hear from each one of you some of your thoughts on the companies that we've seen today. And then after that, we'll get into the vote and hear who you've each picked to be the potential winner, as well as myself. And in the meantime, we will pull up a survey either here in a second where the crowd can also vote. And we do want to hear from you and see what you liked here today as the winner from the crowd. So, Leah, Teddy, give me your thoughts on the pitches we heard here today.
Yeah, I can go ahead and just tell you one thing I like about each company. So for me, Surge, they're playing into the data AI field, which is just quickly growing right now, and there's just a huge need for data. So I think that they're really answering a very big need. Next, we had I think Rise Robotics. What I'm really impressed with Rise Robotics is the traction. They have a product that is completely new, but they already have customers. They're already making money, and that's very impressive. The next one, Koios Medical, is just a life-saving company, and it's already working. And if you look at their sales, it's just been kind of a J curve right now. So that's definitely what you want to see for a company you want to invest in. Jason, who just pitched. I've been following Jason for years, since I was working at Stardex about 5 years ago. He's just been able to bring the crowd with him alongside on the market. And same thing, I've been able to follow the progress, and that is very impressive to me to see that he's getting close to commercialization right now. I'm actually proud because I'm a personal investor as well. And last one, Frontier Bio, Eric, you're just going to not only solve, as you say, animal cruelty, but really help people potentially get organs that they need. And that's the type of breakthrough and moonshot that we need to be putting money in right now. So, Teddy, what about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a great kind of breadth of companies we had today across med tech, infrastructure AI, biopharma, deep tech, health tech software. So I think, yeah, I'll go through each of the companies as well. Koios Medical, one of my favorite equity crowdfunding companies. As Chad, you know, I led Kingscrowd Capital's initial investment and follow-on investment into Koios. And I think just deep workflow integration was, really the differentiator for me. When I first saw Kios, as I talked to Chad more and more, it really just felt that they had a durable competitive advantage in this space. So great to have you here. Surge Networks, similar to what Leia said, I think in this AI-driven world, data really is king. And I think if you're able to bring a differentiated data set to some of these other large language models, AI companies generally, I think that's really valuable and can allow folks developing an AI to create differentiated products themselves using this type of data that they wouldn't be able to get from anywhere else. So, really great to have Surge here as well. Frontier Bio, biggest thing here for me is having, it's very early stage pharma. It's very rare to have a company that has revenue coming in, not just a little bit of revenue, a lot of actual commercial revenue. Now, of course, it's not from what they plan to be their long-term vision, which is, recreating human organs in the lab. But I think it's really kind of shows to the grittiness of that team to really actually get commercial sales, even though they are still technically a preclinical biopharma company. So that's really, really something I like about Frontier. And great to have Eric here. Rise Robotics, I think kind of this tied into the question I asked Hitten, but this type of technology really just seems to be just a clearly better solution to traditional hydraulics. Doesn't seem to be a lot of disadvantages here compared to the kind of status quo in this space. So Rise Robotics, it's a company we Kingscrowd invested into last year or maybe the year before, but one we're very familiar with and really bullish on. So thank you, Hitten. And then lastly, Future Cardia. What I really like about Jason and what he's building at Future Cardia is this is a space that's really dominated by big legacy brands like Boston Scientific, Abbott, a few of the others that he mentioned during his presentation. And his device really does things that none of the legacy companies do. They're very large in that they don't really have a ton of incentive to innovate. And I think, the clinical data that Jason and Future Cardia has just really points to a differentiated product that I think really could be a winner long term. So um, great to have Jason here as well. So those are my thoughts. Chris?
Outstanding. Thank you, Teddy. And there's only a handful of you who haven't voted, but definitely throw your vote into the hat if you want to be a part of the vote. Um, I'll provide a global comment. First off, just a major thank you to each and every one of the founders who partook this week, and especially to this group of five who came back and continue to share their insights and their stories with us. We really do appreciate your time. I know time is limited as a founder, and for you to commit to this pitch and to the pitch earlier this week, it means a lot. That's a part of what makes all of this really great. My global comment here, though, is, you know, the industry outside of us, right? The traditional venture and private equity landscape, they always tell me things like, oh, the only companies that will do well in crowdfunding are consumer companies and consumer products, this, that, and the other thing. We put up 20 companies this week. We gave you all an opportunity to vote on those companies. And what do we have here today? Robotics, healthcare, AI infrastructure. Now, one of them is really a pure play consumer thing. And I just think that's really interesting. And I think it points to the fact that one, there's exceptional companies across the board. Two, I think you, the investors, are looking for really good deals. That is really what you're looking for. And it shows in the quality of companies that are here. Again, we certainly picked these companies, the 20 to be here, but then it was your vote that got them here. And several of the companies on this call are already Kingscrowd Capital backed companies. I think it just points to the fact that all of us as investors in this market are way more aligned on wanting to find terrific investments. And I think you all are a wonderful representation of that. So thank you for that. I'm excited to say, wow, we have 100% participation. That's pretty wild. We had a few people leave because I know we were over 80 investors at one point, or even 90 listening in. But for the 78 that have stuck around from end to end, we do have a crowd winner, which I'm excited to announce in Surge. So major congrats to you, Miguel, on being the crowd winner with 42% of the vote. That's fantastic.
Thanks, Chris. And thank you to everybody that voted. It's a pleasure being here. It was an honor. And congrats to all the other finalists.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That is really, really cool. We'll be featuring Miguel in our pitch review on Monday or Tuesday when it comes out. So you all can check that out. And Teddy, Leia, I want to hear your vote for who's going to win the 5K pitch session, and I'll finish it off.
Sure, I'll go first. As a lot of you know, Chris and Leia, you obviously know this, but I focus a lot on early stage pharma, early stage med tech deals in the equity crowdfunding space, especially with early stage biopharma. There's always sort of an elephant in the room, at least there is to me, when I'm talking to founders that are, going to go into human trials at some point. But in order to bring a drug to market, basically animals have to die. Like either way, no matter how you look at it, it's like the brutal truth. And of course, early on in preclinical work, the predominant test subjects are mice. However, the FDA often requires safety data from two different species. So scientists must then test on animals that we're very familiar with: dogs, non-human primates, pigs, rabbits, among others. So Frontier Bio, when I first heard about them, met Eric, really kind of struck a chord with me just on addressing that sort of fact that's always in the back of my head when I'm talking to pharma companies that are about to go into human trials. About to go into animal trials rather. And additionally, kind of what I already talked about before, which is they're generating revenue right now, which is very, very rare for early stage pharma company. But to wrap it up, those two reasons, my vote is for Frontier Bio.
Outstanding. And Leia.
Thank you, Teddy. Well, it's a difficult choice, obviously, because I love every single one of the companies right now. But I'm feeling hungry, and I'm going to vote for the company that I feel can just plug its product into a variety of industries, and that can just change how things are done. I think every single one of these companies, I want to put my money everywhere because I know they can all be hundred of millions, even billion dollars companies. But I feel like the one that's really going to fulfill my hunger right now and maybe bring the biggest return of all is going to be Rise Robotics. So that's my vote.
Outstanding. I love it. And so I will be the deciding vote here. Look, you're talking about two exceptional companies that I have such regard and respect for. Rise Robotics, we've backed before, and I think what they've built is incredible. And I think they're commercializing. They found a CEO who could bring in and figure out how to commercialize this incredible technology that they've developed over many, many years from an incredible team of engineers and designers. And then you look at Frontier Bio, and I like one of their kind of syndicate leads, who I've known for many years, actually, from a distance, Rob Ness. He said that they turned science fiction into fact. And that's kind of how I felt when he was pitching me. To be quite honest, that's why I love events like this, to make things real for you. Because sometimes when you read on a page, you're kind of like, is that, I don't know, really? Like, is that real? And I think what Frontier Bio is doing, it's never been done before, right? They're literally creating human tissue. I mean, that's unbelievable. And surely there's a massive unmet need there. What I would say here is I think of all the pitches here today, Frontier might be the company with the most risk because it's so novel and out there. But I also think it's the one that potentially has the largest upside. And so for me, that drove my decision to Eric and Frontier Bio as our first inaugural winner of our investment crowdfunding week competition. So Eric, major congrats to you. And thank you so much for being here today and sharing your amazing story and business with us.
Awesome. Thanks so much. This is amazing. Thank you for the opportunity to pitch to everybody.
Yeah, we're really excited and we're very proud to have had all of you on this investment competition. Thank you to everyone who has attended throughout these 3 days. These are amazing founders. Something that's cool about running the conference this time of year is that many of these founders are going to be closing their raises fairly soon. Don't sit on the sidelines. If you're interested in any or all of these companies, put your money where your mouth is, right? With where your vote was, and back these companies. Help them get where they want to go. Momentum means a lot, and hopefully this event helped to do that as well for a lot of these founders to put them on the map. You all are doing phenomenal things, and I hope you as investors feel compelled and educated now to go make some informed investment decisions, especially having been able to connect with all of these founders directly. This has been a lot of fun. It's been a privilege and a pleasure to host you all this entire week. And we hope to see you here next year and on our future webinars. So thank you, everyone. We hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon.